Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson. I'm joined by the Mighty Joe Yeager. Mighty Joe, man, we're here once again in the beautiful SPC here on campus. Man, big game. I know Tech's coming off a disappointing loss, but you know, we talked about in our day after podcast, there's a lot of reasons for optimism for Tech going forward in the last third of the season. Some big games, man. You know, Oklahoma this week, 7 p.m. at the Jones. But how are you doing today, Joe?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, man. Fall is in the air. Halloween's coming right up. It feels like it. So, yeah, I'm doing real good.
I have a question for you. What are you going to be for Halloween? What is Mighty Joe dress? I can see you being Dracula.
Yeah, like little Mighty Joe was Dracula. It was like my mom chose Dracula for me when I was about that tall. Actually sewed up a red and black cape, which turns out to be a dual-use thing since we're here in Texas Tech country.
Nice.
You know, I could have been the masked rider just as well. You know, the masked Dracula riding around biting people from the horse. Wow. That would have been pretty cool. Yeah, Dracula was my thing.
All right. So nothing this year? You don't still dress up?
It's been a while, man.
All right. Well, my boy is making me dress up, so he told me he wanted me to be a cowboy. So I don't think I can really pull that off. Y'all know I'm a city slicker, but I'm going to.
Long Johnson.
Yeah, I'm going to try. So we have some good questions from y'all. We're going to dive right into them. All right, Raider Fan 01 says there are multiple reasons for the loss to Iowa State, but he believes one of the top ones was not having a running game. Do you think what are the chances of Tech establishing a running game against Oklahoma, or do you think they suffer the same fate?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely the running game, or lack of a running game, was the killer up in Ames. No question about that. Yes. And, you know, it's going to be critical again. You know, there's no doubt about that. Fortunately, I mean, I think that Texas Tech is going to have more success against Oklahoma than they did against Iowa State. You know, the real X factor in this game is just going to be which Oklahoma defense shows up, because, I mean, they've been bad for most of the year. Every time I watched them, people were running over them, running through them. They were missing tackles. But they popped up and had a very good game this past week against Kansas State. So have they turned the corner or not? You know, if they have, and if they've got a lights-out defense to go with that offense, forget about it. Nobody's beating them. No. But if that was just a blip, you know, and they revert to form, then Texas Tech will be able to run the football, and it could be an interesting game.
I think everybody wants to know, probably Oklahoma fans too, or just the Sooners themselves. Has Ruffin really made that much of a difference, or just getting rid of Mike Stoops to where they're able to play loose, or they've made little tweaks to the scheme, or like you said, was it just a blip? They were playing Kansas State, a bad Kansas State team. Yeah. All right, Panther Cat wants to know, what's the word on the men's basketball team? He says he wants the real stuff, man. Joe is the man, right?
Well, I can try. You know, the word is beard. I mean, that's the first thing. Yeah. Listen, as long as you got that guy coaching your team, you're going to be good. You're going to guard people. You're going to play very, very hard. And obviously the talent is continually upgrading. So there's that side of it, you know, but I think what you got to deal with to start with is this team is going to have some growing pains, because there's just so many new faces that you're trying to stick all the different pieces together. So don't freak out, you know, if they lose a game or two early on that they shouldn't. But I think they're going to get it together and get rolling, and I look at them as probably maybe the fourth place team in the Big 12 this year. Certainly a return to the NCAA tournament. You know, I've seen projections 7th in the conference. Forget about it. They're better than that. They're definitely going to be better than that. And one guy to keep in mind as a surprise, Josh Mballa.
Yes, okay? I agree with that.
You know, he was kind of an afterthought recruit for a lot of people. I mean, you bring in Kayvon Moore and Kyler Edwards and, you know, the grad transfers, and that guy kind of was forgotten about a little bit. But we've heard really enthusiastic things about him, and what we saw a little of him in practice looked good. That's a guy that could come in and make some noise and would be a huge steal if he turns out to be as good as we think he could be.
Yeah, I agree with you on Josh Mballa. And, you know, the longer I've been here at Texas Tech, the less I put into stock of what I hear from coaches and players as far as, oh, watch out for this guy. And don't get me wrong, I'm not discounting what you said. We saw him, though, in practice, and he looked the part. Just in a little bit that we saw as far as the athletic ability, his frame, everything, it was a lot like how I felt. Now, I'm not putting this kind of expectation on him, but when I saw Zaire Smith, I was like, this guy, he's ready to play right now. Now, of course, Zaire continued to get better to where he was, obviously a superstar. I'm not saying that with Mballa. I'm just saying as far as passing the eye test, a guy like, you could walk in a gym. It's not like this with football, but you could walk in a gym in basketball and be like, that guy's a player. You could just tell. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying. That's the correlation with Zaire and Josh Mballa. I said, this guy, he's going to be playing a lot sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you know, and the idea was that he was going to come in and be a guy who plays really hard, you know, a good motor, a banger, a defender inside, grab you some rebounds. But what we're also hearing is that he has some skill.
Yeah.
You know, this guy is better on the offensive end of the court than was expected. So, I mean, you know, we don't want to go overboard here, but I'm excited to see what this guy can do.
With all the fresh faces, Joe, which you brought up, I just want to point out that Coach Mark Adams is back. All right, he's the guy who's really the architect of this great defense. Yes. That's key. I think we talked about the coaching staff that they lost, and that's important. They did lose some really good assistants, but Coach Adams being there, pushing that defense, making it, you know, be what it is in a lot of ways, that's huge. Speaking of basketball, we have another one. Red Raider KA wants to know, who do we see on this year's team having that killer score when needed, make a big play mentality, and being your go-to guy when a play is needed? Well, I think the obvious is Jarrett Culver, right? I mean, who do you have though?
Yeah, you know, I mean, that is an obvious one, but I think one that's maybe equally obvious or close to is Matt Mooney.
Yes.
You know, I mean, that guy was a stone scorer. Now, at South Dakota State, or South Dakota, I think it was. But yeah, I mean, the guy can play. He really is. And, you know, I think there's going to be maybe a little bit of an adjustment period early on, but he's going to find his stride before too long. I mean, right now in practice, he's facing better defense than he has ever faced in his life.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so that's going to help him, and he's going to adjust a little bit. But that's a guy who can score in an awful lot of different ways, an extremely tough competitor. A guy who can get the job done when the chips are down. So, I mean, you got Culver and Mooney that we see maybe as both deadly threats when a game is close. So maybe the loss of Keenan Evans won't be quite as terrible as you feared, because that guy was something else.
He was amazing. Yeah. I mean, you lose an All-American like that, and just like Red Raider KA said, a stone cold killer. You know, he was the best closer I've seen at Texas Tech, maybe ever. Yeah. So, I don't know if you have that guy on the roster, but you do have some options. I think Culver is very good. He's deadly. And then, like you said, Mooney, one Ghost Raider wants to know if we could give him something, anything that will help him believe that Tech can beat OU this Saturday.
Yeah, well, you know, I think you hang your hat on that maybe Oklahoma's defense is not that great. You know, I mean, they played great against Kansas State last week, and so that is a concern. Yeah. Okay, but the other games this year, they were not world beaters at all. All right.
Army's a pretty good team, but they took them to overtime. I mean, Oklahoma should not be going to overtime with Army.
Yeah, in Norman, you know. Yeah. There's a possibility. I mean, and I think it's a very real possibility that defense is going to have some problems with Tech's offense. Yes. I mean, that's not an Iowa State defense. No. It's weird to talk about Iowa State having a much better defense than Oklahoma, but it's true.
It's very true.
You know, I mean, there's not going to be that mysterious, hard-to-fathom defense that you face with Iowa State that's so hard for a freshman quarterback or even veterans to figure out. With Oklahoma, it's not going to be like that. I mean, under Ruffin, they're just going to line up and come after you, you know, and your guys have got to be better than their guys. So, you know, I think Tech's offense has got a shot, and if they're hot, as we have seen at times this year with that offense, then it could be a very competitive game. And as always, if it's close in the fourth quarter, particularly at home, then who knows what can happen.
That's right. And another thing I want to add is Tech has been, even against Iowa State, though they made some mistakes, they've been very good, especially on defense as the game has gone along. And before Iowa State, you were better at running the ball as the game went along. And I think maybe look at this game as like, as far as if you want to think about Tech having a chance of winning, kind of like Houston. I mean, Houston has an elite offense. Now, I think Oklahoma's offense is better. I think this is going to be the best offense you're going to see. But it's a lot alike in that you have a dual threat guy who can beat you in many ways, a very good player, you know, speed all around the field. So they're going to get theirs. They're going to score some points on you. That's going to happen. But if you can wear them down, like you have Oklahoma State, Houston, even TCU to a degree. Right. If you can wear them down with the running game, you can have some success and possibly, like you said, Joe, get to the fourth quarter, some Jones magic maybe gets rekindled. You know, anything can happen. Absolutely. This Tech team is definitely not one of those teams where it's like, oh, I don't see any way they win. I mean, they're going to have a shot in all their remaining games. I really believe that. But I do think this is going to be the most difficult one.
I agree.
Absolutely. All right, our final question. This is a good one. Comes from Captain Popsicle. He says, bottom line is, he said in the preseason talk, the offensive line was discussed as one of the team's strengths, and by me, and as well as like Kingsbury and a lot of other people. But now halfway through the season, the offensive line has really struggled, and I think, no doubt, last week was the low point for the offensive line. But that wasn't just a one-game anomaly. They've struggled here the last couple of games. Captain Popsicle wants to know what we think is the reason for that.
Well, you know, there's a lot going on there. I mean, Kingsbury was asked this question in the last media availability Sunday, and his response was that, you know, first off, they got to be more physical at the point of attack, which they haven't been. And how do you do that? That's easier said than done. You got to get physically stronger. You got to be more aggressive. Yeah. And then also the fact that it is, in a lot of ways, still a pretty young group. You know, Anderson, Bruffy, these are young guys. He said Jacob Hines hasn't played a whole lot. But, I mean, you get also Steele and Stay Wars have been around for a lot and played a lot of ball as well. So I don't know about that too much. You know,
I'm not buying that one.
Yeah, that's you think about it, it's a little bit funny.
The smell test, yeah.
Right. But you know, I mean, it could be a situation where the talent is just not quite as good as we thought it was going to be. I mean, in my opinion, Steele, when he first got here, people thought, hey, this is your next great tackle.
Yeah.
Your Adrian Waddle.
Plateaued, it seems like.
Yeah, he really has. He hasn't really progressed quite like we thought. He hadn't been bad, but he hasn't been great. I mean, I've been a little bit disappointed in Jack Anderson and Travis Bruffy.
Yeah.
You know, Anderson has not been as dominant. He's been okay. Bruffy has had struggles in pass protection. You know, and then the left guard situation has just been a complete. You call it whatever you want, but it's been a revolving door. It's been a lot of problems over there. So that unit just really hasn't gelled, and you know, there's no easy fixes to it. You know, you just have to work at it and continue to try to improve and get better.
Yeah, and while the youth part, I'm not buying that, because I mean they had like over 100 starts, like pretty much coming into the season combined. But you benched Madison, which okay, you put in Hines. I mean, has Hines really stood out to you? I mean, it's offensive line play, but it's not like he's dominated or even done, I would say, like a good job. So I mean, obviously Brandon Jones and Kingsbury and all the guys, Coach Johns, they know what they're doing. I believe that. So they put him in there for a reason, because Madison, by all accounts, is healthy. So I mean, the guy has started what, like 30 starts or something like that for you. So you started him for a long time for a reason. So that's questionable to me. But then also, just through injuries, you've had a lot of guys out. You know what I mean? And that messes with the continuity on the offensive line. Now, these guys played a lot of starts together last year, but the fact there's been so many guys in and out of the lineup, and that's part of football, but I think that may have messed with kind of them taking a step forward. I think they've taken a step back, because, I mean, look at TCU. You had your whole left offensive line out and your center out at one point. And it seems like they've never been good, or as good as they were earlier, since that happened, since they had those injuries. We don't know how injured Bruffy is. I'm surprised he came back as quick as he could, based on what I initially heard of his injuries. You don't know exactly what's up with Paul Stores. You know, I mean, he had a concussion that will mess you up. He only missed, what, I believe 1 week. Right. I think he had a bye too, but I mean, that thing can linger. We don't know exactly what he's dealing with that. So, I mean, they've had a lot of adversity. So we'll see how they handle Oklahoma, which is we'll see.
Sure, and you know, one other thing. I mean, this is true. I mean, it sounds like you're making an excuse, but you got to take this into consideration. I mean, that Iowa State defensive front was really good.
And their scheme is elite.
And they're going to make a lot of people look bad. They're number 10 in the country in rush defense. Ray Lima, Jaquan Bailey, those guys are going to give anybody fits. So you don't want to judge it too much just coming off of that tough game against an excellent defensive front. But yes, overall for the entire season, it's still been a struggle at offensive line. But you just got to factor that in too.
Absolutely. All right, Joe. Great stuff from you as always. Great questions from y'all. Thank y'all for watching. Until next time.